gosh.
Yeah.
I would have
That
loved
wouldn't
that to
be
be
it.
the run. Just him and like ominously watching in the background as I.
Yeah, turn left.
Uh,
Oh, is the thing okay?
yeah, we'll do it.
Okay, turn left. I'm gonna say that. All right. Look up. Yeah. Right carbuncle. You're outside. Turn right. Yeah, you're good. Yeah, step twice to the right. So look down a little. All right. Keep moving forward. Move right a little. Move more right. Move more right. Okay. Stop moving. Stop moving. Okay, turn right. You jumped over a gap. Okay,
I know
keep
it's
going. You're past the wall.
built like that. I figured there was a
I
gap
know.
there.
Yeah. Okay, keep jumping. Oh wait, zoom out. Okay, 3 steps left and zoom out more. Oh, perfect. All right, zoom in. Okay,
My
1 step
camera good?
right.
Camera's good.
I'm trying to see. I'll have to wait for the door to open. I think. Tap it left once. Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Tap it right once.
Bruh.
And by the way, you hit the wall now. Oh wait, tap it left once. Okay, start moving right as well. You're drifting. Yeah, the camera's good. Yeah, keep. Okay, turn left. Not turn left, but move left. Yep, there you go. Past the pillar. Okay, you're at the corner. Wind passage. Oh wait, you dash right. Okay, yeah, wind passage now. Turn right. Okay, zoom out. 3 steps right. 1 step right again. Okay, press E. Okay, you're on the ladder. Zoom in. Tap the camera right once. Tap it left once. Okay, yeah, go for it. It's not perfect, but it'll do.
It'll do.
Yeah,
Probably.
it'll do.
I'm assuming it will.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
I can't see.
trust me. Okay, pillar move left. Right, you passed it. Keep tapping left just so you don't fall off. Right, pillar move left. All right, passed it. 5 steps to the right. Okay, yeah. Tap left on the camera once. Yeah, that's good.
Speak up a little.
All right. Drifting, start moving right. Ooh, yeah. Okay, that's fine. Keep going. Okay, stop moving. Turn right. 1 step backwards and then 2 steps right. Okay, jump and dash. Okay, 2 steps left. Turn right. Turn right. Okay, tap camera left. Move 2 steps left. Okay, yeah, that's good actually. Yeah, go for it.
All right, you sure?
Perfectly aligned. Yeah, it is. It is. Right, wind stop. And behind you.
Me. He doesn't see me. What's happening? What's happening?
Keep fighting. Move back a little. Okay, he's in front of you again. Like a little far in front.
But where is he?
He's a little too far. Okay, yeah, hit there.
God
Okay,
is
oh my
ass.
god, turn around. Bro, that was horrible. Okay,
All right.
keep walk forward.
Can I run?
Yeah, you can run. You can run. Okay, tap the camera left once. Oh my god, that's really good. Okay, keep going. Okay, stop moving. Turn right. Okay, tap the camera left once. 2 steps right, and then 10 steps forward. Actually, 1 step left. My bad. Yeah, turn left. Okay, 3 steps forward and jump. 1 step more. Wait, 1 step.
One step right.
2 steps to the right. 2 steps right. Yeah. Okay, now climb. Okay, 2 steps right. Yeah, 2 steps forward. Turn left. 2 steps forward. Okay. Right. We're not going to move the camera. You're in front of the gen right now, though.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I hit
Right.
E? Am I on it?
Yeah, yeah. You are facing
Can
towards
I
it, though. So you
angle?
might want to
Let's
move
angle
back.
my camera up. Okay. Is
Oh, yeah. Look up.
that good?
A little more. A little more. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so press 1. Remember, when you press 1, okay, you might want to move away. Yeah. Oh, 3. Okay, there you go. Okay. 6 steps right. 2 more right. 2 more right. 2 more right. Okay, jump.
Ready?
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Look down. Okay, don't spark swap yet. Look a little up, and then 3 steps right. 2 more steps right, and then 2 steps forward. Okay, do it. Okay, keep going right. Keep going right. Keep going right. 2 more steps. 2 more steps. Okay, go forward. Jump.
Nice. Let's go.
All right.
Yes.
Was that first try?
I mean, not
I think
really.
it was. I mean, kinda. Yeah.
First try today, right? Yeah. Wait,
Yeah,
hold on,
yeah,
I gotta
yeah.
find my keys again. I lost them. There you go. Okay.
Oh,
All right, how's
no.
my camera? Let's fix my camera. Let's fix my camera.
Okay, look up.
Right.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, I'll get you to the lantern first, okay?
Okay.
5 steps forward. We'll fix the camera after that. 2 steps left.
Left.
Left, yeah. Okay, 2 steps forward. Tap the camera right once.
Okay.
Wind passage. Okay, tap the camera left. Tap it left. 3 steps right. 5 steps forward. 5 more.
I can't hear right
Okay,
now.
2
It's
more.
like it's quiet.
2 more, 2 more.
Okay, here now.
Okay, tap the camera right. Okay, wind passage. Okay, zoom out. 2 steps right. All right, press E.
Yeah.
Okay,
Love to hear that.
let's go. Okay, 6 steps left. Oh wait, tap the camera right once. And look.
I'm recording. I'm recording, right?
Yeah, you are. You are. Don't say
making
that
sure.
now. All right, look up a little.
All right, hold on.
Okay, 1 step forward and 3 steps left.
Left.
Wait, 3 steps left. 2 more. Left. 2 more left. Okay, 1 right. Okay, move forward 4 steps. Okay, zoom out. 3 steps right. Okay, zoom out. 1 step left. Okay, you can talk to the guy. Oh,
Yeah.
fine.
You do exactly what I say. Put
All
put the deep drill down. The deep drill down. Come on.
Come on.
It's
Do it again.
good, right?
Okay,
Isn't
he's done it. Okay, turn
It
around.
is exactly what I say.
He's a fan.
Oh,
I zoom in.
so excited to get
3
to be
steps
done
right.
with this.
1 step left. Okay, run forward. All right, stop. 1 step back. 6 steps left. Yeah, keep going. 2 more. Okay, 5 steps forward. Okay, 1 left. Now, just keep, like, I know you probably can't hear the footsteps, which is why I'm just going to say, just
Yeah.
tap W, like, keep going. Yeah, keep going like that.
I'm gonna go very slowly.
Yeah. Okay, stop.
Okay.
2 steps right. 2 more. Okay, wind passage. All right, you made it across the gap. We're close to the exit. Okay, we're at the bottom of the stairs. Okay.
Remember,
4
we just gotta
steps
spark
forward.
swap that bounder,
Wait,
and then I
oh
press
yeah,
C,
So
and we'll
tap
be
the
good.
camera left one.
Okay.
Okay. 1 step left and then 6 steps forward. 3 more.
3 more forward.
Yeah. Okay. 2
I'm
more
out?
forward and now you're out. Yeah, you're outside. You're outside. 2 more forward. Okay, turn right. 1. Okay, now do the leap and dash. By the way, you might want to aim the camera just a little up.
Okay, how's that?
Yeah, okay. So 1 step left and then 5 forward. Yeah. You can just keep going forward now. And then I'll tell you when to hit the ledge.
Okay.
1 step left, actually. Yeah, there you go. All right, hit the ledge.
Okay, ready? I'm gonna back up. Tell me when to
Actually,
stop
tap the
backing up.
camera once. Actually, yeah, the camera's fine, actually. Yeah,
All right.
go on.
I'm
Do
gonna
it.
just tell me when to stop backing up, okay?
Yeah. Stop. Actually, 2 more behind. Okay, do it now. No, what? Okay, you're gonna have to do the bell. Oh, you are going somewhere. 2 steps back. You're kind of stuck. 4 left. Two back and then 4 left.
Can I go forward?
4 left, 4 left, 4 left. Just run forward, run forward. Run forward and jump. Just keep jumping. Okay, keep going. Zoom in. Okay, start moving. 4 steps right. Zoom out. 2 steps right. Press E, press E.
Yes!
Oh my god. Okay, okay. All right, move the camera up.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, come on, come on. Can't celebrate yet.
All right.
Still got a bit more.
What am I doing?
Okay,
What am I
move
doing?
the camera up.
Up, all right.
Okay, turn left.
Turn left.
Okay, go forward. I think we spent, how long is it? Like
Just,
11
it's not over
hours
yet. It's not
on
over
this.
yet. It's not over
Keep
yet.
going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Okay, tap the camera right. I will turn right, turn right. Okay, go forward 6 steps. 3 more. 2 more. Turn right. Okay, 2 steps left. Turn right again. Tap the camera left once.
All right.
1 step left and then wind passage. Okay, you're over that little gap. Okay, tap the camera right. You're on the fur fire, like, kind of corridor.
Okay.
2 steps right. Yeah, we're just avoiding the some of the weird obelisk things. Okay, I'll tell you when to stop. Keep going, keep going, keep going. All right, stop. Turn right. 2 steps right. Okay, 2 more, and then just run forward. Jump. Yeah, just keep jumping, keep jumping. Okay, you are at the entrance of fur fire now. Just keep running and keep jumping. 2 steps right as well. Okay, keep going a little. Turn left. Okay, just run forward and then move 6 steps right. Oh my god, I'm really good at counting. Keep going.
I'm scared. I'm scared.
You're at the cliff. No, don't worry, don't worry. I got you.
Right.
Trust me. Keep going.
How many steps? How many steps?
5. You're like on top of a little obelisk. Okay, you fell down. You're fine. You're fine, fine. You haven't fallen off, don't worry.
Okay.
Not yet.
All right. What are we doing?
Okay, 4 more forward, 4 more forward. 3 more forward. Turn left.
Okay.
Turn right.
Turn right.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Okay, 5 steps forward. 4 more. 2 more. Okay, 2 more. I'm gonna do intervals of 2, okay? Just
Okay.
2 more. 2 more. 1 more. Okay, 2 steps right. 1 step forward. 1 step. 1 step. 1 step. Okay, look down. We're about to do this box swap. Okay, look up a little. To the right a little. Yeah, go for it. Okay, we're not done yet. Tap the camera right.
Okay.
Tap it right. Tap it right.
Should I move it right?
No. So, look, actually, move the camera up a little.
We don't have time. All right.
Okay, tap the camera left. Okay, move forward. Okay, 2 more steps. 1 step. 1 step. 1 step. Okay, zoom out. Okay, 1 step forward. Okay, one step back. We're gonna do the ledge thing.
Okay.
One step back. Press
Is that far
space.
enough?
No, that was too far. Okay, one step forward and then one step forward again. Then one step back. Okay, press space. Okay, zoom out and wind passage. All right, zoom out a little. I can barely see. Move the camera left a little. Actually, turn left and then turn right.
Okay.
2 steps back, 2 steps right.
Should I zoom back in?
Yeah, you can zoom back in now. Okay, so when you walk forward, the spikes are gonna fall. Do that. And then you can dash right when they start moving. Okay, just keep going forward, and you should know where the lantern is because you'll hear it.
I can't really hear it.
Okay, just keep going forward.
Wait, I'm
zoom out and
closer,
press E. Press E. Zoom out, press E.
All right.
Okay. We're at the finishing
jump.
line. We're not there
Last
just
jump.
yet. We're not just last jump. 4 steps left. 2 steps forward. 2 steps forward. Turn right.
Wait.
Turn right.
Wait.
I mean that works.
Yeah.
Okay. 2 steps forward. Now
Can I
imagine
do
this, right? You see the ladder at the right.
Yeah.
You're at the edge.
Can I do
Jump
a strong leap?
Just keep going forward, okay?
All right, ready?
Yeah. I'm ready. Come on. Oh my god, I see it.
Where is it?
Okay, 5 steps forward. Dude, we got all the time in the world for this jump. Left, turn left.
Okay. Turn left.
Turn left. Oh, okay. Right, 4 steps right. Tap the camera right. Tap it right. Just keep tapping it right. Okay,
We've never been here before. I don't know what to do.
Don't worry, one more. Don't worry, I got this. 1 step right. Run forward. Yo, we did it!
Yeah!
We did it! 11 hours! 12 probably, actually. 12 hours for that.
Oh my gosh. I'm free! We're free! We did it! Yes! Let's go! That's layer 2 blindfolded. We escaped layer 2 blindfolded. Everyone subscribe to Always AFK. Subscribe to DaniCress. Let's go. Oh my gosh. Oh, it's finally over. Oh my gosh.
Oh my god.
Oh.
You can finally take the blindfold off.
Bro, please tell me I got that on video. Okay, we're good.
Yeah, you did. Okay, and Discord audio set. Oh my god. Wait, the gaming chat there? Wait, move. Wait,
no, I'm using my bouncy ball. I'm using the bouncy ball.
No! You should keep that in the video. Oh, he's calling me.
Oh my gosh, dude. Yes, we did it. Yes. Oh my gosh, dude. That was awesome. Oh my gosh.